Hi, my name is Leah, and today I'm going to be doing a wrap up of the 9 books that I read in April. Of those 9 books, 2 were audio, 3 were physically read, and the rest were all ebooks. So I'm just going to throw myself right into it. And as usual, I've listed this in the order from least favourite to favourite. At least favourite, I read the short story Awakened by Zach Bohannon, I think his name is pronounced. This is a short little 20-page vampire story about a man who wakes up in the middle of a cemetery and he has to find his way home because a vampire apocalypse appears to have broken out around him. That is pretty much it, and nothing else happens. That is literally what happens in it. There's a nice little twist at the end that was kind of predictable, but unfortunately, because of the short length, it was quite a broad story idea, and because of the short length, as I said, it's literally 20 pages, it didn't really have time to flesh anything out. It felt like reading more the summary of a story idea rather than a story itself. So I only gave it 2 stars, unfortunately. It was an interesting idea, it's just that nothing was really done with it. So unfortunately that's 2 stars. Then a 3-star, I listened to the audio of A Dark and Drowning Tide by Alison Saft. I really wanted to enjoy this solely because the US cover is under the dust jacket. This is the Illumicrate edition, and it is just so pretty, and I really was hoping I'd love this so that I could face it out on my shelf. Unfortunately, it was only a 3-star. This is about Lorelei and Sylvia. Lorelei is a folklorist, and what was Sylvia again? I don't even remember what Sylvia was because it literally none of it would stick into my mind. I just was not interested in what was going on. The visuals were pretty, and Lorelei and Sylvia themselves were likeable enough characters, but mainly Sylvia. Lorelei had her unlikable moments, but it didn't really bother me. She felt very real, and clearly the world had a lot of thought put into it and so on and so forth. I just could not focus on it for the life of me. It kind of just threw information at you very quickly, and I struggled to embed a lot of it into my mind. But basically, they are part of this group of people who are traveling to look for, I think it was the source of magic, I think they called it, for the king, so that he can continue conquering the kingdom that they're currently in. And maybe this is one I should have physically read, so maybe I'll physically read it another day. But I just struggled to hold a lot of the information about the world building in my mind. That's the problem with audiobooks. Sometimes everything just goes. But it basically, yes, they have to go and search for the source of magic. However, their team leader, who is also kind of their mentor, kind of pops off. Don't know if that's a... yeah, it says anything. Yeah, the mentor pops off, and there's sort of a murder mystery involved in there. So they have to figure out exactly who killed her, and all the other people on the ship are suspects because all of them have a reason to dislike the mentor character. So that was kind of interesting. But overall, it was a 3-star book. As you can probably tell, a lot of information about it did not stick out in my mind at all. So I'm not opposed to maybe giving this a second go, rereading it, but as of right now I will be unhauling this copy, which is a shame because it is so pretty, but that is going to go. So I also gave 3 stars to Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This book is about Domingo, I think it's pronounced. He is this young boy living in Mexico City, 17 years old, and he basically collects garbage for a living. And one day he encounters, I might be pronouncing his name wrong, Atul, I think her name is, and she is a type of vampire. There are lots of different types of vampires in this world. The type of vampire she is, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce because I know I will butcher it, but she is a type of vampire from Mexican folklore, and basically she is being hunted by this other group of vampires and by the authorities, because vampires are not permitted in Mexico City, because in this universe vampires are known. And she and this boy basically develop a bond with each other, and he is trying to help her escape. I found the characters quite likable. Domingo, he's 17 years old, he feels quite naive. If he was like a sheltered kid, maybe I'd understand, but he's been living on the streets for a while, so he just felt quite sheltered and quite naive about everything that was going on. So I feel like he could have been written a little bit older. But Atul herself was an interesting character. She is very much doing what she has to do to survive. Sometimes she makes questionable decisions, sometimes she can be quite unlikable at times. But overall, I found her to be an interesting character. She's very much someone who was in a position of power and suddenly felt herself having to deal with not having that power anymore. And it was interesting to see her deal with that. The other characters, the sort of side characters, were fleshed out for what they were. I remember maybe 2 names of them. I did physically read this one. But they were fleshed out for what they were. They were more fleshed out for secondary characters. The antagonists, they felt a little bit one note, but it's a very short book. It doesn't give a lot of necessary detail, and though you don't approve of it, you can kind of semi-understand exactly why they're hunting her and why they dislike her. So the main issue main 2 issues I have with it are, I don't know what the laws in Mexico City are, but I did find it a bit weird that they were portraying a sort of growing romance between this vampire and the boy, mainly because she's 23 years old and not like mentally older, but physically 23. She's 23 years old and he's 17. I don't know what the age of consent over there is, but that is a very different, that's a 6-year age gap, and when one of them's a teenager, that 6-year age gap might as well be a huge chasm. They're very much on different maturity lengths, and I found that a bit weird. Maybe that's okay in Mexico City, I don't know, but I found that a bit weird. And there's also the fact that it's both simultaneously very fast-paced and very slow-paced. It felt like it was long, drawn-out periods of nothing happening, and then all of a sudden loads happened, and the pacing just didn't feel very consistent to me. But overall, I didn't think it was bad. I don't think I'll ever reread it, but I did enjoy my time reading it. So that was that one. Next up, Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I finally read this one and gave it a 3-star. This is about Nina and Nestor. They were best friends when they were children, and they when they were children they encountered something, and one of them was hurt, and Nestor ended up leaving, and Nina stayed behind, but she didn't know why he left. And now it takes place during the Mexican-American Civil War, and Nestor has returned to help save his home, his childhood home, and he reunites with her for the first time in 9 years. And there's a bit of tension there, as there is whilst in the midst of this war going on. So they're dealing with that, and at the same time there are these blood-sucking unnatural creatures that are currently in the El Norte area where the battle is taking place, that is sort of taking advantage and picking off people when there's sickness going around, and they have to deal with that at the same time while dealing with their feelings with each other. I gave it 3 stars because it was interesting learning a bit about the war that was going on. I'm not very knowledgeable about much of American history, admittedly, but so it was interesting to learn a bit about that. And Nestor and Nina, again, kind of like Atul, they felt mainly realistic characters. Sometimes they were likeable, sometimes they weren't, sometimes they made questionable decisions. They felt like real people. They were not constantly making the right decision or saying the right thing at all times. They mess up and so forth. But even when they mess up, they're still pretty likeable people. They never was I put off with them, even when they were being cruel. So I like that. and I think they did a good job with like the yearning between the two of them, because there's feelings there and so on and so forth. And I like it very much covered the conflicts of like class, because Nina is the daughter of a rancho owner. It uses a lot of Spanish words in there, and I don't necessarily know what a lot of them mean. I was kind of Googling as I went. I think it was a rancho. And her father is a very well-to-do man, whereas Nestor is not. He's of a lower class than her. So there's a lot of forbiddenness there that they have to deal with. My main problem really was the vampires themselves kind of felt underutilized. There was a little twist involving them that popped up that I went, okay, oh, that's that's interesting. That's how are they going to go forward with that? And they kind of did nothing with it. Well, they did a little bit, but it felt like it wasn't very fleshed out. I feel like the idea behind the vampires and their sort of motivations could have been fleshed out more. That being said, the physical description of vampires is very basic, and it does get a bit repetitive in its descriptions of them. They're very kind of like a feral Nosferatu type of design. But the idea behind like the transformation of them, of people going from human to vampire, was a distinct one that I haven't encountered before in vampire literature, so I did find that interesting. So it was 3 stars. I'm probably never going to read it again, but it was enjoyable while I initially thought of giving it 4 stars because I was enjoying it while I was reading it. Once I stopped reading it, I haven't really thought about it, so that can probably go as well. What did I read next? Next I read Dracula, a visual storybook by J.H. Williams III. I borrowed this off Libby, actually thinking it was a graphic novel, but it turns out it's more of a sort of a coffee table book of this author who read Dracula and just made illustrations based on the descriptions, which was interesting. Spoiler alert, I finally finished Dracula, and I read this immediately afterwards. So it wasn't really a storybook, it was just a collection of illustrations that a reader has done on a book that he enjoyed. And the illustrations were quite pretty. I enjoyed looking through them and so forth. I gave it a 3 star. So that's literally just what it is. But otherwise, yeah. And then getting into 4-star territory now. I've read Strange Buildings by Uketsu. This is a sequel to Strange Houses, sort of. It doesn't really feature any of the cases in Strange Houses, but it sort of deals with the after effect, because the in-universe author published their book, Strange Houses, about the events of that book, and now people keep approaching them about these strange buildings that they're encountering. I think there are 11 buildings in total. Yes, 11 buildings in total, and again, it's all sort of the process of piecing it all together and so on and so forth, and the ideas behind them are always just like incredibly outlandish but entertaining and so forth. So I did enjoy that. I enjoy sort of, I can never piece them together because these feature all the like diagrams of the layouts of all the buildings, and it's always like, okay, can you see what's going on here? Can you see what's wrong? And I'm always sitting there going, it looks like a perfectly normal building. I don't know what's happening. It always completely goes over my head, but I enjoy the way the mystery is always pieced together and so forth. And once you get into it, you can slowly start to notice little similarities between things and so forth. And I just enjoy them. They're little books. I never really think about rereading them later, but they're a fun time to read. And I gave this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy this one. I think I enjoyed it more than Strange Pictures. I can't remember what I gave Strange Houses, but I think I actually enjoyed this one more than Strange Houses as well. So it's a 4-star. It's a really good little, I say little, this one's actually quite a bit longer than the other ones, but they're an enjoyable time to read, and they're very unique little books. So I gave that 4 stars. Next up, there you go. I also gave 4 stars to The Fourth Wife by Linda Hamilton. This is the story of Hazel, and she was born in I think it's the 1800s. I don't recall if they actually said the date, but I believe it was the 1800s, and or very early 1900s. I can't actually remember, but probably should Google that. But she is basically born into the Church of Latter-day Saints. She is a Mormon, and the branch of Mormonism that she is in practices polygamy, and she is married to a man to be his fourth wife. And unusual in the Mormon lifestyle, this man chooses to have all four of his wives all live in the same house with each other. So she has to go live in this house with a strange man that she's just met, with 3 other women who are also his wives, and she has to basically figure out her place there, all while dealing with she's got a lot of guilt. She has thoughts and feelings that she's convinced that God is going to punish her for, because she's not been a good, proper, respectful Mormon wife and so forth, and she's not grateful enough for the opportunity that was given to her and so forth. But the house that they are all living in, there's something wrong with it. It's a haunted house story, and there's something going on in this house that it's invading her dreams, it's invading her waking, and the other wives, she can never quite piece out whether or not they see it too, or if it's just her going crazy. And it's sort of both a mixture of a haunted house and kind of psychological, because it delves into, like, she's like worried that she's going insane, she thinks the devil's coming for her, and so on and so forth. It very much goes into detail about like the mindset, and all 4 of the wives kind of are different attitudes towards their situation. You got one who very zealously believes that this is the way things are supposed to be, and you got the one who, yes, this is the way things are supposed to be, but I hold hope that things are going to be better in the future. And one who's just like, no, I hate this. I hate that this is my life. I wish things were different, and so forth. And it's very much the different attitudes that they all have, and how they all respond to it, and how this particular lifestyle is hurting them, because none of them are necessarily happy with the way things are. So it very much delves into that. Again, I'm not very knowledgeable about Mormonism. I think I know they can't drink caffeine, I think they can't have tattoos, and I don't necessarily know if it's a requirement, but I think it's encouraged to have a lot of children in Mormonism, or at least it was. I don't know if that still is the case, and that is kind of the case here. There's children galore in this house, so there is that. But I did really enjoy it. Hazel is a likeable, and she's a very smart character. She's not kind of just, though she is hesitant because she does devoutly believe in her vows, she is questioning things. She's not just laying down and taking it all. She's questioning things. She's looking into stuff, and so on and so forth. So I did really enjoy this book, and I would recommend it if you're interested in a haunted house story. And then the last 4-star that I read was Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, Rite of Spring. This is a graphic novel, and it is the sequel to Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I read this on NetGalley. I think it comes out this summer. Is it June sometime? And this is a follow-up of that story. Basically, Beneath the Trees is about a little small town, and all the characters in it are animals. Our main character is a bear. There's moles, there's a fox, there's ducks and pigs and so forth, and they're all the citizens of this town. And our main character, Sam the bear, is a well-respected member of the society. She is also a serial killer, and this sort of follows the events of the first one, in that the family of one of her victims from the first one has been searching for her brother for ages, and she finds herself in this town and in contact with this bear, and it's sort of, is she going to figure it out, or is the bear going to get away with it, and so on and so forth. One thing I respect is, I like the fact that they're all sort of cute and cuddly animals, because it just completely contrasts with the level of gore. There is entrails and blood and flesh and everything just splattered all over the place. It's an extremely gory environment, and the contrast with these cute and cuddly bears and ducks and so forth, it works, and I really enjoyed it. So that's pretty much it. It sort of also touched on, it's been, I think it was like 8 or 9 years in between the two stories, and it sort of also delves into the change in technology, because the initial book actually took place in the 1980s, and now it's the 90s, and technology is growing, and there are things that are going to make it a lot harder for a serial killer to get away with what they're doing. There's more surveillance, there's more ways for the families of victims to communicate with each other and piece together the clues on their own, which I feel like is a reflection of modern society. You don't, like in the 80s, like there's serial killers galore, and now there still are, but they're not like as long lasting. It feels like they're getting caught quicker, and they've not got as many victims, which is very good. And technology is helping with that, changes in forensics and communication and awareness and so forth. So it is reflective of the modern day, and it's just a fun time, really. It's not great literature by any means, but it's a fun time to read, and it's cute and cuddly animals butchering each other is hilarious. So, and last of all, I finally finished Dracula by Bram Stoker. I started rereading or re-listening to the audiobook back in January because I was in an audiobook slump. So I decided to pick up something that I've previously given 5 stars, and I gave it 5 stars again. I love this book. It is so atmospheric. We know the story of Dracula. It's Jonathan Harker goes to this castle in Transylvania to help this elderly old count settle his affairs and move to England. And the count is a vampire who does not let him leave, and there are people back home worried about Jonathan. His wife is trying to figure it out, and there's this one young woman named Lucy who is ensnared in Dracula's thrall, and there are men in her lives, and as well as Mina, who's Jonathan's wife, and her best friend, all worried about her, and it's put together like a mystery, trying to piece together exactly what is happening to her, who is this mysterious count, and so on and so forth, and how do they defeat him. And I just really love this. All the characters are very likeable. It could be so easy to be put off by it because it was written in the 1890s, and it can be very 1890s, especially in its attitude towards its female characters. That there's very much a case of like, she needs to be kept out of this. She's a woman. This is not for her sensibilities, so on and so forth. Completely ignoring the fact that Mina, said woman, is literally the reason that it's all put together. Like she's the one out there figuring things out. But it's of its time in that regard, so I don't hold that against it. And to be fair, I've not seen every Dracula retelling, but I've seen a few, and of the ones that I have seen, it's saying something in this book which has got all the blatant sexism of the time being thrown out, is somehow still the most feminist one, in my opinion. So, but I do really love this book. Van Helsing is so much fun. I love the fact that he's this kooky little scientist guy rather than a buff vampire hunting badass like he is in so many adaptations. Mina and Jonathan are ride or die as a couple, and I quite like Lucy's suitors, all the men who love her, Arthur, John and Quincy. They're characters who so easily could have been all in competition with each other and trying to one-up each other because they all love the same woman and all want to marry the same woman, but there's respect there, and they respect her as well. They respect her decision, and it's all very much I love this woman, so you treat her right. I won't try to steal it from you. You just treat her right and understand how lucky you are that you got this woman, to the man that she ultimately chooses, and so forth. And the characters are just so lovable. You learn to love them. It's such a funny book as well. It's not something you probably think of when you think, oh, this is the classic gothic horror, but there's so much humour in it too. The characters have so many funny moments in it, especially Van Helsing. He is so entertaining. So I think this is probably my favourite classic I've ever read. And going through it again, I don't think I necessarily registered it the first time I read it, but how interesting the character of Renfield is. He was such an interesting character, and other than that one Nicholas Hoult film that I haven't seen yet, I can't really think of any films that really focus on his character. So I'd be so interested in reading a retelling from his perspective, because he is such an entertaining and sympathetic and pitiful character in it. So this is 5-star. I love it. I could ramble all day, so I'm going to move on. Those are the 9 books that I read in April. I'm going to hurry up because I've got about 3 minutes left until my video times out. So I'm just going to quickly go over the books that I will be reading in May. I've actually started 2. I started the audiobook for The Cove by L.J. Ross. Little British mystery thriller about a woman who survives an attack by what seems to be a serial killer who is going around London, and as a response to the trauma she ends up moving to Cornwall to run a little bookshop, and that's where I'm currently at. Something might have followed her, I'm not sure. It's a really short book. The audiobook's like less than 6 hours. The font is huge, so I'll probably finish this in a night. But yeah, so I'm just reading that. It's a nice little palate cleanser from some of the more focused horror that I've been going through. I've also, I don't have a thing to hold up, but I've started the ebook for American Psycho, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm about a quarter of the way through. It's the 3rd time I've said this, but I plan on reading The Vampire Lestat by Anne Rice. I actually do have to read this now because I've got like a month until hopefully the TV show airs. Please, hopefully it airs in the UK at the same time as it does in America, because I can find no information about it yet. So I'll hopefully be reading this. Hopefully I'll get the motivation as well, because I finally finished season 2 of the TV series. And last of all, Libby has updated, and officially I now have access and have borrowed all 6 audiobooks for the Mortal Instruments. I have not seen the film. I watched the first episode of the TV series and probably decided that I was not going to continue because it was just so bad. But I will hopefully give these a go. I know they're really popular, and even if they do turn out to be bad, I'm hoping they're bad in the way that I can still have a fun time with. So I will give each of them a go. So until then, thank you for watching. Have you read any of the books that I read, and what did you think about them? And I will see you next time. Goodbye.